Hi, and welcome to this Module 9, where we'll cover adapters, where we'll talk about how you can actually connect to different systems using the adapters in the platform. So we'll not cover all of the adapters that we've done recently. We'll just cover some of the most used ones that I have some experience with and give you an idea about what you can actually do with these adapters. And obviously, all of them have different requirements on how they work in different scenarios, and you would need to solve it with understanding the requirements of the adapter, the system you have, together with the CPI. So on all of these different landscapes, you have two options you can specify. Either you can specify the proxy type, which is, do I just want to connect from the CPI cloud to some other web service, or do I actually want to run this on connect to my on-premise system using the cloud connector? Then you can specify this in a drop-down box, and if you specified on-premise, you would then also get the option to specify which cloud connector location you want to specify, and then you just need to use the URL from the cloud connector when connecting with these data. The other important thing is authentication is really important when doing any kind of work with this, and you need to figure out how do we actually specify it correctly in your landscape and what the systems will do. And obviously you need to specify it as secure as possible, and then what you have on both systems. So sometimes you can actually specify HTTP without any authentication, and that may be okay if you have created the authentication in a different way using bearer token or something like that. But yeah, you can specify it as password, certificate, or other authentication options. And when you're specifying a password, you cannot specify it in the communication channel. It needs to be saved as a part of the security material that we have under here, or if it's certificate, they will be in the key store that you can create them here. One thing that you need to remember is when transporting this, it is a good idea that you would, for instance, if you're creating a new username password for Salesforce Succesfactor, I recommend just calling it Succesfactor, and then on the development tenant, call it Success Development. And then in your configuration, you just refer to Succesfactors. If you, for instance, instead would use prod or dev in the username, you would need to do that configuration in the different landscape. So I strongly recommend just use one global name for all of them. And then obviously if you want, for some specific cases, or when you just want to test something, you want to connect it to the productive system, you can just, on your development system, specify production or something like that. So you can actually see what it will be in the other systems. So recommending to just use one parameter for this. And when doing authentication, you may need to try a few attempts understanding what's going on and checking the logs, check what you can see at the receiving system, because sometimes these errors may not be easy to understand. And yeah, that's the whole purpose of this, understanding what they are and then figure out what you can actually do with them. You also need to parameterize all your URL. So a lot of times in this we have just, well, at least when you're connecting to third-party systems, you need to specify it in a parameter, either the host or the full URL, because if you have not specified it that way, whenever you're transporting, you need to go into the system, make a change in that configuration, and then run it again. And then it becomes really difficult understanding what you have deployed in your different systems if you're changing the code. So all of this must be parameterized, and you can also use Groovy Expression. So let me just show you what this looks like. So we have a flow. I think I had created one here for module 9. So if we just use a normal HTTP channel, we will then just use two bracket CPI. Then in here you can then specify it. Then because of that, when we're clicking here, we can see it as an external parameter, and once we have deployed it, we will then, or if we deployed it on do configuration, we can configure this one without in our overview without having to do any specific changes to the URL. And that's really useful because, well, yeah, you don't need to go into it and change it. And the same is true. You can also use the Groovy expressions in this. So if we look at the HTTP sender, and we have already been using that a lot of times, whatever we're saying, when we have deployed it, we will be able to see it using HTTP in the beginning, and then whatever parameter that we have specified. You can use question or star in it if you want to have multiple endpoints, or you want to be able to see or call it from different services. You have so when you've specified it here, you have the option here to create this cross-site scripting forgery, and when you have that enabled, you need to call the service first with a get and a header parameter called fetch cross-site script token equals to fetch. This will get the token, and then you can upload it. If you do not, it will say that token is required, and you can then see that in the header information. I would say that's mostly for cloud, or if you have put a user interface on top. If you're just doing normal integration but using it a system-to-system integration, I would not connect it on. Authentication, because we're calling the service, we need to authenticate ourselves, and you have two options. Either you can use this role, or you can create different roles in the monitoring cockpit. So you have the option in our CPI system to create new roles and then use them. So you can create a role and assign it to some users with that they can use it for a specific purpose. So in here we have our system, we have our authorizations, and then you'll just create a new user, and you will assign it to a role. What's the role? Oh, so here we have the roles. I guess you can just. So I guess you need to assign that specific role to it, and then run it here. You also have the option when you're doing this to specify users in here, if you have certificates, you can upload the certificates and specify username in here. And then if you have specified this username, you can show the assignment, and here you can see I've just assigned this username. So that means if I'm coming with my certificate, I will be validated with that certificate, and then it will figure out I'm this user and I got this role. Yeah, so that's what we have here. You can save user certificate user mapping for it. One thing you need to know, if you're doing user-based trusts, you need to know that there's only a specific list of certificate that's supported for this, and if you have a root user certificate that's signed with anything else on this, it will not work. And we can see here that the SAP support certificate is already here, and this is the one that you're also creating single sign-on that we created in one of the first module, and show you how you can actually do that. If we're looking at the HTTP receiver, it's just building up a raw HTTP channel or raw HTTP request that allow you to actually see what's being sent. The only thing that's a little strange in it is when you're specifying it, you have to specify the address and then the query parameters in two different segments of it. So this would normally, be this one question mark and then the value below here. But because we can specify it here, we don't need to specify the question mark. And obviously you can also see this when you're running it to see what's actually being sent. And here we have the different option that we have for client authentication, basic authentication, whatever we need from it. Let's see what else there were. Yeah. So the adapter will specify this question mark between the channels. One service that I found is really useful when you're testing some of this and have trouble understanding what you're actually sending is this request pane. And how it works is you just click create request, and then you can actually see you'll get a URL here. And if I just call this on a new service, URL header body yeah, sometimes I've seen it's not that stable, which is a little of a problem. But when it works, it is pretty good. So what is it complaining about? Forbidden? Once it works, you can then go to the inspect, and then you'll be able to see what was actually being sent. So let's just try this one. I was not using post. So when we look here, we can see that we have sent this with these standard requests or headers that it have returned, and we can see our body. So this is a good tool for doing these things, and obviously these have a limited lifetime, keep 20 requests. So it is not anything you want to base everything on, but it is a good thing for testing these requests, because it will send the data and you'll be able to see what's actually being processed. and that no matter which of the services, HTTP, all HTTP services, it makes sense if you're not sure what you're sending to use this approach. The other main thing for doing integration is SOAP, and if you're adding a WSDL to it and deploy it, you'll then be able to see this this WSDL for that specific user. So let's see if I did add. And the WSDL can be exported. So once you have deployed it, you will actually be able to see this in the runtime artifacts of this. So we can, under here our monitoring, if we have any SOAP scenarios. Probably not any of these. We would actually get links to how we can run these. So actually here I think we have one. So we have a link here. We can go download this using SOAP UI. We can also check out this data. And here we have our SOAP configuration. And yeah, this. So here I think we have used a manual definition, and that means it will just take whatever it. Yeah, it doesn't care. It's not really a SOAP in that perspective. But if you have a SOAP adapter and have configured it, you would actually be able to see the data. So you just need to go in here, create SOAP. SOAP x.1.x. Here you have the connection. If it's WSDL, you need to select a WSDL and upload it. I think there's two interesting things. So you have the robust, and this is the CPI standard for all flows. And the robust handling means that it will just the HTTP session would be alive as long time as this request takes. So, and that also means that we can propagate errors back to it instead of do other version handling. We can just say, hey, there was an error on this flow. You're getting a 500 error back. Maybe some error information that you can use to trace this. Or the VS standard approach is if you just want to use this as a fire and forget or async messaging, you'll use that one and say, okay, deliver it. And once the PI or the CPI has received it, it will process the message and ensure that it's being delivered correctly to the recipient. So these are the two main concepts. Either do we want to let the sender know that we're processing it, and obviously if you have something that takes multiple minutes, it's probably not ideal to let them wait until you have processed completely. You probably don't want to do then the VS standard and just say, hey, we have received the message, and then you want to do your own error handling and async message processing behind it. Another interesting thing is the Odata. When you're doing either Succesfactors or anything like that, they're using Odata, and I think a lot of the SAP services is also moving into Odata. And the Odata adapters is actually really good. It gives a lot of options, and there's a specific Odata adapter for Succesfactor. But I think there's a lot of the standard concepts, and obviously I don't have a Succesfactor system I'm running here, so it's a little difficult showing how it works, but it works actually the same way as if you have just using the Odata service from the CPI. So let's just switch this back. That was not yet. So we need to specify Succesfactors Odata. up there, version 2. And then you want to specify this this address. See here, and it's no authentication for it, and obviously you probably want to specify real for live scenarios. You have then different options. You have get, query, delete, patch, update, depending on what the specific message is. But let's just use the query. And what we'll then get is this field, which is the resource we want to specify. And then you'll be taken through this tutorial that actually shows you what the content is. So if you just fill in here, we can see we got a customer, we got a company address. And if we select, we can actually see other information here. So we can actually see what are the orders they've created. Order date, so it will expand. So we can see we're taking the orders, we would select order ID and orders date. We need to specify our company data also. Top 2, so we only want the first 2. And we can specify if there are any specific fields we want to use for our filtering. So it will take all the different fields that we have, and you can specify as equal or lesser or whatever, and then you'll actually get this, and we'll just like finish, and this will then create an CDMX file, which is kind of a description of what this is, plus a get file. You also have or XSD that describes the content coming back. You also have the option, if you have, for instance, use one of the update posts, it will also create an XSD for you. And the process is a little different, but then you'd actually see that if you map the data to this XSD, it will be uploaded to the system using this specific format. So yeah, update, patch, put, update. Are the different options for these things. But yeah, it's really useful just to browse this, know the different levels, and then find the data that we want, put in here. We can put this in as a parameter, so we can put our Groovy scripts in here also, if we had that. So hit account if we wanted to specify it that way. So we can specify how many data we want back from this. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, so the receiver, we have this update part, and that you have the same with the Salesforce. I think that maybe the only difference is the authentication between them. If we're looking at SFTP, which is only the SSH variant, I'm not sure if there will be an SSL variant, and that's something that's also used for in some scenarios. When you're doing it, you have options for specifying a polling interval, what it should do with temporary files, stuff like that. Authentication, private key, username, password. I think that these are the options for it. AS2 and DMS. These are, I think the AS2 is only available in the Enterprise Edition as a part of making B2B capabilities for users. Whereas the DMS is, yeah, something you can use. And it's the main focus of this is for async processes. If you want to have exactly one, so you want to make sure that the message being delivered, you can use the DMS for that. And here you would actually, either you need the Enterprise Edition that comes with some form of messaging, or you need to buy the Enterprise messaging as a separate package from SAP to handle this. If we look at some of the SAP adapters, there's the XI adapter. That's the standard proxy adapter from SAP that allow you to actually get the data and understand what's going on in it. you have the RFC destinations. So you also have, you have the RFC. You must specify the destination you want in the cloud cockpit. So over here you have a part that's called destinations. Here you must create a new destination that's called type RFC, and then users would be able to use that one. I'm actually not sure if you can use other of these properties. Then for Idoc, we coming from a PI world, Idoc is one of the, well, I think in SAP world, Idoc is one of the main languages for handling data, and most of the time the data in the Idocs is using some binary format where it's being specified with a binary format, and then you got some metadata that describe what this should look like. When you want to use this, you want to send that it needs to send it as XML, and then it's able to send it in a way that the CPI can understand it. And I imagine that this is because they do not want to have a full deserializing of the content in CPI, because the amount of data structures and what's going on there. I think it's a lot easier just to send it as some XML format, and then you can actually see what the data is there. So I think that was all I wanted to cover in this module about Adapter, getting you started with understanding that there's different adapters than one we have just been showing here, trying to use the Odata adapter. And I think this Northwind service that we use here is really useful just to understand the Odata, what you can actually do with queries in it.